In this week's Memes and Machines, we ran through the Adobe Max releases. What does this mean for content creators? We spoke about work, policies, unlimited holidays. What do we think? And how can they motivate or demotivate teams? And finally, we dived into artificial intelligence, more specifically AI agents and agentic processes. What are they? Why should you care? And how will they influence your job? That's the important thing here.
Strike number one is Disney hosted. Strike number two, it might be some very rarely visits the UK American super talented DJ that you absolutely love. And I didn't even know who he was. And I was there. Yeah, so strike number two was there, right there.
Too many cocktails last night. Mine's gone blank.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked into the sounds of memes and machines.
We are back, Memes and Machines. Gents, you would think, because I am in Espanol right now, that I would be wearing sunglasses. You'd think that's what I would be doing, but I am laid back and holding my microphone like a microphone. I'm going old school. First, I want to say it's good to see you. It's been too long. We had a week off. It feels like an eternity.
Yeah, good to see you too, mate. Good that you can make it on the road this week. That's some serious... I didn't know you were in Spain. I just assumed you're in a hotel in England somewhere.
This is the commitment to the cause. No,
now I'm looking at that door, though. It does look kind of Spanish.
It is. I'm in a really sick hotel, actually. It's. I feel like I'm, transported back to the 1930s. It's very
What are you doing in Spain?
Traditional Spanish. I'm just having 10 days here. I just wanted a little bit of winter sun. I'm not the best version of myself.
Topping up that tan?
Something like that,
He brought his microphone on the road, though. That's commitment, 10 days off, but still microphone in hand. That's the guy.
That's the move. The move of a modern entrepreneur. Can't leave home without this. Or without this. Shout out to Logitech for the microphone.
Yeah, on the road you sound good as well. It actually sounds like, kudos.
There we go. I love to hear it. Right,
You got a little ring light as well, have you?
Yeah.
No, if you saw my set, I'm actually going to show you the setup because it's quite embarrassing. But when you have to be quite inventive to figure things out, you'll see here, I've got an ironing board that is sat in front of me, hosting. So yeah, I'm applying my creative skills in new ways, something like that.
Man, it's the budget on the road. Take note of this setup because this is good. Tune into Riverside too. This is like clean.
Exactly. I'm going to say, Jay, get me a T-shirt that just says "No excuses." No excuses. And when Ben almost doesn't make it, I'm just going to show him the T-shirt. We'll get a GIF. Our chat will be wild with it. No excuses.
Yeah, well, that's a good little segue because I'm sick and Ben's hungover. He's been to an epic concert and I've been to London and back. And no excuses for any of us to be here.
My sister's got a good... You'll like this one, Chris. Oh.
Look
nice
at
and intimate.
that.
We were pretty clear. We were right in front of him. Just
That's
now you're
so
showing
cool. Wearing a Disney shirt as well, like a baseball Disney shirt.
Oh yeah, he had all the merch. He had a Disney bomber jacket as well, and
just to catch people up about the green room chat. So Ben went to a Disney-hosted Anderson Paak set, like music extraordinaire Anderson Paak, DJ, vinyl DJ, drummer, singer, collaborator. Basically, the modern day Freddie Mercury, and he didn't even know who he was.
Some DJ just said some DJ, some event. Yeah,
I was just so jealous I wasn't there.
Yeah, the reaction was hilarious. First he goes, "I go to this thing." We interrogate
Disney. Disney is my number one to be as an event, organizer. Probably the best entertainment company in the world. So strike number one is Disney hosted. Strike number two, it might be some very rarely visits the UK American super talented DJ that you absolutely love. And I didn't even know who he was. And I was there. Yeah, so stroke number 2 was there, right there.
Cooler than cool. Cooler than cool, right. So, party aside, you've been on the road doing memes and machine shit, Chris. Adobe Max, you got invited to the event.
Yes.
Give us the breakdown. Start there.
So, yeah, I wasn't sure why it was in London because I knew that the event was going on in Miami. So, first of all, I was like, what is this exactly? And then the details came out that they'd hired a very private cinema, Everyman, very nice setup, and that they'd invited, you know, who they deemed like 100 of the best creators in and around the London area. But people came as far as France, all the way to London to watch this live Miami watch party. But it was just that. You know, we were in a cinema setting, seeing what was happening live in Miami, even though they'd gone through the terrible hurricanes in Florida and everything. The event still went ahead. And yeah, it was just announcement after announcement about AI infusions into their technology across all areas. 2D, 3D, video, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, everything has now got infused with AI products. And it's just about how workflows are going to change for creatives. And it was fascinating, but it was a lot, you know, of information. We had to write it up in the form of a newsletter, and that didn't even really do it justice, to be honest with you. It was just so much. Depending on which software is what you use in your creative sphere, you should take note. You know, if you're in Illustrator, because you're an illustrator, there's now Gen AI in there that you need to be aware of.
Okay,
Whereas
give us the breakdown then, Chris. So start video first. What was the most impressive addition to the Adobe suite that you took away for video?
So we've been waiting for such a long time for one of the big players to come into the video space, because the 4 players currently, Runway, Kling, Minimax, and Luma, are neither of these are legacy big brands that do video stuff, right? We're waiting for the Apples, the Adobes, the Microsofts, and the Metas to come into the game. And Sora, because OpenAI is now worth over 100 billion. So these are like the Davids versus the Goliaths, you know? That's the way to think about the sort of video space right now. The Davids are all winning out because they're all out, they're doing amazing things. But Adobe had yet to pull the trigger. And weirdly, they called their model Firefly because that's the image model, but now it's combined image and video generations. And it's said, and this is really valuable to anyone like me who's a creative agency owner, it's the first and only commercially safe generative video platform on the market. So clients can be okay with the fact that it was only trained on licensed Adobe stock videos and not scraped internet IP issues, which other platforms are, you know, currently liable for.
I think that's it's a bit of a falsehood, though, that, right? Because
it's a very
they people say about where, you know, the stuff that came out about them not owning people's stuff they make in their programs, but
right.
Have they trained it on that data?
No, well, as far as they alluded to, it is only the stuff that's licensable. So that they basically have...
But that's what it says in the contract, though.
Right.
Everything that is created on the platform
is very hazy, like, wording, isn't it?
The clause in the contract or something, it basically said, anything you make in Adobe products, we have the rights to use in some way, shape, or form X, Y, and Z.
That's the controversial
AKA
thing every platform's going through right now.
Data. Yeah.
Like I woke up to LinkedIn this morning, signed in, terms and conditions are updated. Every single platform's going to have to include this. Like, we're going to train on what you enter into our platform, so not only you own it, but we can extract value out of it by training it into a LLM. Now, the controversial thing in terms of court of law is, does the LLM transform what was put into it and not spit out the IP that was involved in it? In which case, it's not really a copyright infringement. You know, so like learning this is the thing that I really find fascinating. Every human has to watch IP to learn. So do AIs. But they don't, what we come out with as ideas aren't seen as copyright infringement because of the Disney movies we watched. So why is AIs?
Yeah, we hold technology to a different standard. I have this.
We
I have a very
absolutely
strong,
do.
I have
We
a very strong
absolutely do.
opinion. Someone said to me, I was at a conference.
Self-driving cars, by the way, are a great example of that.
100%. Yeah, that's the perfect example where it's much more. You are much more likely to die in a taxi than you are in a self-driving car, based on the data by a number of magnitudes. Right. However, it's the fear of the unknown. I was at a conference speaking to in-house lawyers, and actually they were a receptive crowd to start with, but maybe skeptical of how impactful AI may be on their profession, knowing that, there may be some limitations. And I did a talk on agentic processes and agents, and I think by the end of it, people really had their eyes open to some of their preconceptions they held. And one of the questions was a little bit around, holding technology to different standards. Someone was saying something like, yeah, but what if they get things wrong? Inaccuracies, hallucinations. I go, well, there are companies that are breaking down tasks to micro tasks right now so that they can solve things. So if you do one thing, if I said, write an essay, Chris, I could break that down into 1,000 mini tasks, tune models specifically for each to ensure that there's a level of accuracy that really matters. That's one approach to solve the hallucination challenge with generative AI. And one of the things that I said is, I said, I guarantee if you go around to your colleagues and ask them a question, half of them are going to get things wrong. Like, we hold the technology to a different standard. It's the same with creative. I speak to ad people all the time and they go, won't all advertising be the same and ubiquitous if it's all built and trained off the same stuff? I go, all advertising by large today is the same naff, ubiquitous, boring content. Like, it's not good. The vast majority of advertising is not good.
It's a really good point. Like, I wonder what our threshold is. Like, do machines need to be 3 times better than humans, 10 times better than humans? Like, if you're talking about deaths on the road, like these autonomous cars that are going around California right now are very popular, actually, especially with females who feel like late at night, their taxi driver might be someone to be threatened by. So they love getting into the security of not having a driver and just, they can completely customize their experience. Turn the music on, what they want, open the windows, turn the heating up and down. There's no one else in there and they're really enjoying the experience. Now, if one of them had a fatal accident and then there were like 10 other fatal human accidents in the same thing, I promise you, everyone's talking about the autonomous accident that happened because everyone fears that. There's no control that humans have in that accident that happened versus the 10 that did happen manually. Everyone feels like they would have done a better job than the person that crashed. Whereas actually, there's statistically always more human crashes than there will be machine ones. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's the illusion of control.
Exactly.
And to your point, it's actually
overconfidence.
It's a psychological principle called loss aversion. So there's this idea that something will have to be the cost of something has to be 3 times greater than the reward in order to make a meaningful change. So my argument, if you take that as a baseline principle, you could argue that technology has to be at a bare minimum 3 times better than us before we accept it as like safe and okay, right? So I think a lot of it just comes from,
I guess, at that point.
Yeah, totally.
Because I wonder when it will become a moral issue. When machines are so good at like driving cars, for example, and interacting with other machines on the road, when will it become like immoral to let humans drive because of the amount more accidents that they can cause on the road than machines can? And everyone else is like slowly waiting for it to become fully autonomous. Or will that never happen? It's a really interesting, autonomous cars are such a fascinating space, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's a field where you look at something that could completely transform many things. Not only, making a vehicle that's static, productive. So you own a car, it now becomes an asset that can do things. Safety concerns, arguably saving over a decade millions of lives globally, you could argue. But then you go, it's going to displace 12% of the world's population that drive part of their profession. You go, well,
it's really
that's
wild.
Weird. That's strange.
But I'm going to segue back to your conference that you had, because lots of the lawyers' work can be automated in the same way that the truck drivers can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a research for lawyers is like very much by the book. You know, anything that's in a large database of facts and historical trials and things as citing as, you know, that's a lawyer's job. And that was the misconception when AI first took off, is that this is coming only for blue-collar jobs. It's not. It's coming for multi-skilled jobs at every level, actually. But the more your job can be automated, the more in issue you are. Like, the biggest moats, I believe, are people like plumbers. I don't think plumbers will be displaced for a long time, because these, like, Tesla bots need to have the dexterity of, like, a robot and the built-in intelligence to do the thing. So that's, like, multiple issues that I can't see, you know, stuff like that being an issue for.
I also think with anything that is physical, there's a much longer legislation curve. So if you think of regulation to govern self-driving, it's going to take a lot longer than the technology will be there, and probably already is today. The legislation will take many, many years and decades, even in more progressive places and countries. The same will be said for robotics. Do you think we're going to let robots into houses anytime really soon in a material way? Not these 35,000 robots. But let me ask you a question.
Depends what you want to call a robot, because I've had a robot in my house for the last 15
the kitchen,
years.
Yeah, the microwave. No,
computer. I'm talking about like the literal robot that scanned my entire house and hoovers it every day.
You go out with a robot?
No, I have like... I was an early adopter of the
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
The first robot vacuums that came out.
For that one.
They're so good. Mate, I couldn't live without it now. I've got one upstairs and one downstairs. They're incredible.
This is a PC podcast, Chris. We don't want to know what nefarious things happen in your household. That's all I'm saying. We'll leave it there. A conversation in that.
Polyamorous.
By the way, just on the robot thing, did anyone have a perspective on like Elon Musk faking the robots interacting with people?
That was really awkward. That was super awkward. I think a lot more like issues has to come from founders knowingly doing these things, because in the industry we call it greenwashing, but it's like fraud if you think about it. Because
what did he do? I don't know what happened.
Okay, so a lot of his Tesla bots came out on a demo, Ben, and
I saw that. Yeah,
they looked like they were being autonomously run by an AI, like, you know, an open AI was guiding their movements. They were being controlled by humans.
How do you know that?
Because it was found out afterwards, and it's been proven that this was the case. Now, the problem with all of this is that 90% of people won't have heard that news. They'll think that these things are far more capable than they currently are, and they'll either be buying stock in them or they'll be like more fearful than they should of them. But it was all like a smoke and mirrors thing, because they're not currently capable of doing what they were shown to display in the videos. So it's dodgy marketing.
Have you seen iRobot?
It's exactly like that. Yeah, there was a lot of online memes about that. So Jay should find some of that.
Yeah, it was a fascinating. You're right. There's a moral question. I thought it was entertaining as hell, and the idea is I think there's always plausible deniability at that point. You're at an event, they're demos, they're not working. They never made the claims that they are real. They never actually spoke that they did these things. They just interacted with people, and the crowd then filmed. So they're never making any public claims themselves. They're allowing others to make these claims. And it was hell of impressive. This was one of those moments where I go, oh, wow. And we've seen, obviously, the return of a space shuttle, you know, the heaviest object ever. And I think as someone that knows very little about engineering...
Amazing. That was truly incredible thing to happen. But that's the thing is, he wanted to bring it up to the same level of that news by making it look bigger than actually what it was. And that was the issue that people found with it. And it is disingenuous, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's actually he knows how to capture attention. That's undeniable. And I think he's led, I would say his tech events are the most entertaining. Apple events are so boring these days. Everybody else reads the same rule book. I like the fact that he's showing up with fake robots that are interacting with people. I'm here for it.
I tell you what, though, he did fall into the Apple trap because Apple are so bad at that. They put graphs up without any indication of what they mean on their displays and stuff. It's complete, like, fabricated numbers sometimes. It's like 3 times higher than what? And then, like, Microsoft have done this, and OpenAI fell into this trap, and everyone's putting out demos. Like, the big thing, and we should definitely find a clip for this, is there was a recent demo where they said that it was in real time, but it was sped up 3 times as fast to make it look a lot faster than it actually was. And these sorts of things get into serious repercussions. You know, like the stock fell 8%, which lost like $1 billion or something like this because of a bad live demo. And when Google hallucinated as well live in a demo, this was massive issues for Gemini, you know. Trust in Google was massively eroded, and everyone's now thinking the future of search is going to change, and Microsoft rode that Bing bandwagon into the sky. Like, it causes rifts when these things go wrong. So seriously, like, Elon, if he wants, because I agree, he is way better at doing live demos and being entertainment and that Twitter guy, right? Like, but he should also not have faked it, because that's falling into the same trap as the competitors that he has.
I don't know, because I think he has so much pedigree and credibility. Even the engineering feat of the mobility of the robots was super impressive. The fact that they layered that up with these what seemed like no latency sort of reactions. It was these interactions, and the voice synthesis was actually really impressive. Still had a robotic edge to it, but there was this human-like quality to them that I thought took everyone back. And then you combine that with these amazing engineering feats. Ben, as a creator, what's your perspective on kind of like faking things in product demos, or showing a version of the future version when you launch something? What's your perspective?
They all do it, man. It pisses me off. They all do it because, like, their marketing promo is usually so far off what is like actually reality of when you go to use it. And it just ultimately, I think we've discussed this before, it's just
so many words for it, like cherry picking, greenwashing, you know, these all sprout up because of how common it is. Like,
it's just it just leads to disappointment and damaging to trust. Because if I see that you showcase that you can do X, Y, and Z with this tool, and then I go and use it, and I can't even you know, do ABC, you know, how, like, well, I'm not going to use this again, or like, it's just that, like, you know, I just think companies need to be a bit more honest, but maybe they don't because of the fact that a lot of them are public traded companies.
Well, the problem, Ben, I find this to be the case, is everyone has to rise to the bait. If someone claims to be way better than what they are, then you need to do similar claims to entice people. Because if you claim to be way lower, then they're like, oh, you're not the best, so why would I try and use you? You know, it's very difficult, and it's like a one-upman game. It's never ending.
I think you have 2 market forces. You have one leading authority does it, pushes the boundaries of reality and kind of exaggerates, for lack of a better word, or lies, if you want to call it out for what it is. That's a market force. That means that's the new standard. Combine that with how all this information is disseminated across the internet. The most extreme opinions get all the attention. If you come out and go, we've got a marginally better product than what happened before, no one cares. There has to be some theatre and some edge. So again, I think that pushes product managers and product teams to kind of exaggerate through the process. But
it's genuinely refreshing when you see it like not claimed as such. That's how uncommon it is to not do that. You know, like I can name like a handful of like genuine announcements in the last 10 years where I go, oh, they're not claiming as much as everybody else. But it was refreshing to see the way that they were like, it's good, but there's limitations, you know?
I think it's like opportunity costs, though. For these moments, you spend a lot of time, resource, and energy around very narrow moments in time. And 3 months later, something new and better's come along. So I think it's the risk reward. It's the same reason the pharmaceutical industry will planning, you know, like losses. They'll go, you know what, we're willing that 1% of the people that use our products will sue us, and they'll actually factor that into their financial model, and they're okay. Very unethical, by the way, but they're okay doing it because of the commercial gain. And I think we're seeing some of, it's not obviously doesn't have the same nefarious impact on society, but it's the same sort of capitalistic push pulling people. It's really, what were you going to say then, Ben, about creators?
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, they're obviously part of the problem as well, in that, like, you know, they're wanting to showcase the tool in its best light to get the most amount of views. Because, you know, if I make a video on a tool and I show it in a realistic and unimpressive way, people are not going to give a shit. Whereas, like, I mean, a lot of people do it on X. I know there are lots of creators on X that are just like, oh, here are the 10 best examples of like this tool, and, you know, doesn't actually show that maybe that person took like 5 hours to actually do that, and like 100 prompts, and like, I mean, similar probably to like Chris's workflow, where the end product is actually not the first attempt.
Exactly.
Like, but like it's made it kind of seem like it is, because
that's the cherry picking thing that everyone really gets annoyed with.
People's expectations are very different than what actually they can achieve, basically due to, I guess, cost, people's own ability to figure out how to get the best out of the model, using, you know, prompts and style and direction.
Definitely.
Will that change until the incentives are only going in one direction? Attention. I don't think it's going to change.
No, it won't change. It won't change, because I make money from getting views and brands paying me to get them views.
That's right.
And so do lots of creators, and we are essentially marketing vehicles for brands, because, you know, we make our money by marketing the brands. So, you know, it's, well, different creators have different ways of, I don't know what the right word is, morals, or like way of, like, you know, how far they're willing to exaggerate the capabilities of the tool in order to get views or get paid, or, you know, it's the whole idea of like, well, Marquez has always never done a review, like a paid review. You can't have a fucking paid review. If it's paid, it's not a review.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a review. It's like, I don't know what it is, but it should be coined.
Unless there was something directly in the contract that says I can say anything that I want to.
Yeah.
You know,
which they can't. Yeah,
which no brand will ever give you. Yeah.
If I'm paying you, I want you to talk 90% good stuff, and then maybe 10% some of the limitations, but talk about them for a little bit.
It's the same reason that employees won't slam bad employers publicly. They will when they've left. They will. It's funny. I used to do executive interviews in the companies I've been in. I made a habit of doing a lot of them. And it's a laborious task, but I only did that for two reasons. One is people are their most truthful on exit. And I only ever wanted to know three things. You know, what's one thing that I should protect at all costs in this team or this organization? Just one thing. Give me one thing that you go has made your experience special, or you think we need to protect. The other is one thing you'd want to change, something specific, not general, this person or that, like something specific. And then the final is, you know, tell me about your experiences specifically that, you know, might have led to your decision to leave. Just give me more context. And that was always sometimes hard to hear, but it gave me a renewed focus on things and policies and initiatives we did with the best intent that were maybe poorly executed and or people didn't like them. I'll give you the prime example of this. For many years, we used to do unlimited holidays. And, you know, some skeptical souls would go, oh, they're just giving you unlimited holidays so that you work. You don't take them. And you end up, that's not the reason. The reason being is we're grown-ups and you can decide when you need a break better than I can, right? The problem with that policy, even if the intent is pure, the problem with that policy was that people don't feel ownership. So the right policy is just give a very ownable, generous holiday entitlement, 30, 35 days, pick a number. And that to people feels like ownership, because the secondary or the unintended consequence of unlimited holidays is the anxiety that you create when there's judgment amongst team members. If someone in your team takes an unequal amount, they may need it. They may be more productive than you.
Giving everyone a finite amount creates like balance between everyone instead of like
resentment.
this. Yeah.
There is resentment.
Because I thought in that system, did someone take the piss and then that caused resentment? Yeah, I could see it.
Like that, if someone takes the piss, it's like that's a very hard judgment call when you scale as well, because your version of what's taking the piss may be different to mine, right? And we all have different perspectives that are equally valid. So I left that program after about, at least 5 or 6 people on their exit interviews mentioning, going, okay, we're going to change that and just give everyone 30 days.
I agree.
Holiday.
I think that's the worst thing ever. I've heard it in a few people I've spoke to that also have that policy, and I think it's stupid because I'm like, well, does that mean everyone aims for 30? Because that's generally what you do. But like, I work really hard. I'm going to take 50 days.
Do you know what?
Can I take 50 days? Who's going to tell me no? If you say unlimited, where's the line?
Yeah.
So what? How does that work then, Ollie? How does that work then?
This one is going to completely screw up the holidays. Like, but if this approach is really hard to implement, but it's Chris Doe's approach, and I'll give him full credit for it. What's the value each employee is bringing? If they're delivering it in 3 days a week, they can take 2 days a week holiday. If they're getting all the work done that needs to be done for the agency, because they're that good and efficient, in 3 working days, give them 2 days off. Like, that's the way that value should be employing your, like, holiday scheme.
So we can take this unlimited holiday, and I say, hey, Ollie, you're paying me a full-time contract, unlimited. I'm going to have every Friday off. So now we're on a 4-day work week.
Can I tell you, right? This is where my perspective in that was, people don't really abuse the system. They don't do that because of the social pressure of, like, I don't want to let my team members down. Like, if I'm doing that, I'm just being a bad colleague, right? If I'm going to put the burden on everybody else on 1 day a week when I haven't pre-agreed that, you're creating a sense of inequality. So there's inbuilt social pressure to sort of conform. That exists. The reason I didn't actually like it was because it was the bit when people said, I don't feel like I own it. And I didn't like that. You go, okay, let's create some standards. And I'll tell you another thing we tried, and this was a sample. We said, write your own contract. So you can put, exactly to your point, Ben, you could put in your contract, I want 50 days a year. Right. And I would like to start at 10:30 a.m. We tried this. This is a team of, in the US, we tried it. There was like 35 people. We tried it. And what we found is, in a business that relies on synchronicity, meaning, we have clients that need us at 9 a.m. for a call that is very important, but one person who's crucial to the project started at 11, that kind of didn't work. So in environments like ours, where you're interdependent on one another, and you're not a solo performer. If you're a solo performer organization, probably some engineering setups, maybe some kind of like recruitment setups where you're motivating salespeople, you can govern like that. In a marketing function, it's different people with different skills working together under the confines of other people's needs. They need that report at 9 a.m. We have to do it at 9 a.m. So the system we tried actually failed, only because of the work that we do, not because it's a terrible idea, by the way. And our logic was like, people in a morning, some people are morning people, some people skew to, evening. So why don't you structure your day like that? It just didn't work. But we did try it and like got some learnings from that process.
I'll give you some serious props for experimenting with it, because do you remember that story in London where there was a restaurant started that was called Pay What You Think It's Worth?
I've heard of the concept, but I don't know the specific story.
So the idea was people with more wealth could turn up and value the meal and give a high price for paying for it. And people with less worth could come in, have a great meal, but not have to pay as much. So essentially it was, pay for the experience or the value you think it brought to you. Now, the problem with that is that it was a great in theory one, but again, it got abused. Too many people turned up and didn't pay enough. The restaurant stopped making as much money as it should. And the more typical model of just charging $15.99 or something was actually seen to be as better. But many of these have been tried, they're like, the problem is, like Ben said, is other people get jealous of other people when it comes down to holidays because they value them so much. So if you feel like someone else is taking the piss, went on a crazy 2-week bender in an Ibiza, and you've got a family at home and didn't take hardly any holiday because you're really trying to pull one in for the team this year, you might feel like, well, I could have used that holiday, you know, or when you were just getting drunk in Ibiza. So it's you create tension amongst people that didn't exist because they all had independent holidays before. They were sorting that out separately with their own private lives and families and friends. And then you've caused interdependence.
It's why you give uniforms to children in school so that they aren't bullied for maybe not having a certain
standardization.
There is merit for these systems in society. It's very easy to critique these systems as imperfect vehicles for business and organizational design, but they exist for a reason, by the way.
Yeah, I agree.
They're and it's good to experiment. I'm in that genuinely. It's good to see, did it work? Did it not work? Why did it not work? Get real feedback on why it didn't work from people that left that, saying, look, this isn't for me. Well, why wasn't it for you? Because we need to make it better. Otherwise, we'll scrap it. And being willing to change is the biggest asset a business can have. You know, just being fluid to change rather than rigid in structure where you can crumble if it goes wrong.
Yeah, it's one of the advantages of a startup. You know, generally startups emulate others like them or similar businesses. But one of the advantages you have is you can really, really play with this stuff for yourself. You can ask those questions, like the 4-day work week thing. I wasn't ever, even though I've been very progressive in policies, I wasn't for the 4-day work week on the basis of startups are very difficult. And I know there's a lot of evidence that would say, there's a lot of data or studies that suggest you could be more productive. I just don't see a world where if I got 10 of my colleagues together in a room and we went at it for 5 days, people would outcompete us at 4. I just don't would we be more fulfilled long term? Maybe. I just don't see how people would outcompete us. I just think that's an undeniable truth. And that's
they
wouldn't, yeah.
They wouldn't. I can't stand people that just are 4 days. Yeah, of course people want 4 days because then you don't have to work Friday. But from an employer's perspective, people, what will happen? We'll go to 4 days. I was like, 4 days. I'm going to be super productive in 4 days. Give it 6 months, people will be unproductive in 4 days.
Yeah. You get used to the situation very quickly.
As soon as people get used to a 4-day work week, they then become lazy within that 4-day work week. And they're now even less productive. And over 4 days, they're the same level of productiveness over 4 days as there was 5 days. So altogether, less being done for the business.
By the way, the
UK
government
still having to pay the same amount.
Got the completely wrong end of the stick when it came to the 4-day work week, because the Europeans mean it literally. And what I mean by that is 4 days of 8 hours working. What the UK government thought the 4-day work week was, let's cram all the same hours you would have done in a 5-day work week in freaking 4 days. So you
add an hour before and an hour after, right?
You're doing 10.5 hours a day.
So you're fatigued. It's not your best work for that reason. I would see there's people some people in our organisation have chosen to work 4-day weeks historically because new children, different, or the children or commitments.
The option to do so because of your family or some situation you're in is the benefit, but not making everyone do it by principle.
I think
forcing them.
I think the observation that I noticed though, those people are crazy hard working and would end up working 5 days anyway. And actually, it's not guarded. So if let's say if someone's had decided to take a pro rata on their salary and work 4 days, they end up working 5 anyway. So there's all these falsehoods that exist within these systems. I understand why people want them. It's obvious to Ben's point, of course. And actually, from an employer's standpoint, there's merit in having the most motivated, happy team. If you have a happy, motivated, energized team that love working there, that's good business. So I get why you may choose to work less. There is merit in doing that. I just don't see a world where in a competitive environment, someone who works less than me can outcompete me. And I just use me symbolically. I just mean anyone.
It's really tough, isn't it?
It would just the same problem. The same problem will happen with the holiday, as in people will go to 4-day, and some people in the team will know, in order to stay competitive, that Friday where everybody's off, I need to do work. I need to, like, shit needs to be done. And like, then there's a level of expectation of, well, actually, I need somebody else. I'm relying on somebody else in my team to also, I need their help to do something. Oh, but it's Friday, they're off. Like, and so then there's just going to come this disparity between people that are like workaholics, like, and actually will still use the Friday to work, 100%. And the people that will just switch off and go, I'm not touching my laptop on Friday because, quite frankly, now it's the weekend, right? And I need you to do something for me. And then, then people are going to get pissed off.
I've got a solution, by the way. I am going to program AI all GPT, and he is going to be hyper efficient. I'm going to create an agentic process where he does X, Y, and Z. He solves complex problems. I'm going to send my boy in 24 hours a day. He's going to go in there, GPT all, agents.
That's hilarious.
Agents.
Well, yeah. Well, you just build a Friday agent.
That's actually in fact, you've just given me an idea, Ben. I am going to launch a Friday agent, and the whole point is it works for you on a Friday. Let's go a step back, right? Agents, and it's going to be a word that everyone's going to hear for the rest of the year. They're going to hear it all of next year, and it's going to be something that you hate to hear. Agents. So let me just give you one brief overview of my perspective of agents. So in simple terms for me, agent, in fact, I will take Sam Altman's framework because I think it's helpful context. So Sam Altman, founder of OpenAI, described the evolution of AI, generative AI, in more recent years. Started with chatbots, number one. ChatGPT, you could interface with a singular language on a single prompt and get outcomes. Then we moved through multimodality. Chatbots can now see, hear, read, and write. You go, okay, there's multimodality and multi-functionality between formats. Then we've started to advance the models and their intelligence levels through advanced reasoning. So now you create more parameters, more context windows, and these models now are getting smarter and can solve more complex problems. Then the next era, which is where we are just transitioning into, is the era of AI agents and agentic processing, meaning that AI will work with AI to complete a task. And right now we have systems that are very capable at linear tasks. There are tons of AI tools that are great at transcribing information from a video. There are tons of large language models that are great at writing. There are many that are good at reasoning. There are others that are good at creating videos. There are others that are great at creating images. Now you can tune a variety of models in different ways and combine them to create tasks, which really, from an organizational standpoint, takes AI from being this passive tool that me and you use to help us to an active collaborator in an organization. It will literally collaborate in your team when you're not there. So this is like a really interesting era. It brings into question, jobs, the world of work, organizational design. I really do think this is something that we will be grappling with for many years. What do you think, gents? Who wants to build their case for or against, or just share some interesting thoughts on agents first?
First thing I'd say is lots of people have this opinion. The Zoom CEO's already announced avatars, and he believes that your avatar will be the thing that attends most of your meetings in the near future. So, yeah, I would say, it's not just the opinion of OpenAI that agents are coming. There's many companies betting and hoping that you use their version of an agent. You know what it reminds me of? If you're old enough, who remembers Clippy? Clippy was your first AI agent inside a Word. Every time you went in there.
Wow. Okay.
Everybody had a feeling about Clippy. Some people hated it. Some people loved it. Clippy's got a lot smarter. Are some people still going to get annoyed by the fact that Clippy's everywhere? because every hardware you buy in the next couple of years will come with an AI agent built into it. Apple Intelligence will be on all your iPhones. Microsoft PCs will have Copilot. Everything will be built in at a desktop level. Now, you can opt out of it, but it's going to be built in by proxy. Now, this is the thing that agents scare people about, is now is it going to have everything big data-wise that I do? Not just with my browsing activities on the internet or my habits, but everything, every time I open my desktop, is it going to be everywhere? Can I opt out of any of this stuff? That's the big issues that a lot of people are going to face in the next couple of years with agents. They're going to be incredibly useful, but in order to be useful, you're going to have to sacrifice more personal data.
That's okay with me.
That's okay with me too, because I'm going to have a virtual desktop, hopefully just with an agent built in, and that's it. I will have everything there, like my second brain, that it can access and do all sorts of stuff on my behalf. Other people will wrestle with that and not be okay with it, I feel like.
Ben, what's your verdict? How are you think as a creative? Does this scare you, excite you? Neither.
Neither, but well, like I just see it when it comes to for like agents, it means that now everybody in the organization can essentially have like a personal assistant or an executive assistant. Like that is essentially what and businesses can build those for people in the team, and it'd be like, yeah, like this is your virtual assistant, this is how you can use it, it works. Like that space is going to be huge, and that's how I'm looking at it now as well. Like what tasks can I automate? How can I build agents to help me do X, Y, and Z? Because now, and it costs me basically nothing. Costs me a subscription and some. So for simple tasks that can be automated at scale and are done a lot, then actually it becomes very useful to everybody in pretty much every job. And I think people should be open to adopt that. If there's an issue around data and privacy, I would ask the person that's concerned with that to maybe review all of the things that they've tick boxed already that's sharing all of their data. They just don't even realize, and they're like, oh no,
That's very
my
true.
data, not about my data. I'm like, bro, you're
you're
already giving away all your data. I don't know what you're talking about.
If you're on the internet at all, you're giving away a lot more than you realize.
Oh,
in 99% of cases.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure my bank cards are probably in many lists and stuff, like somewhere on the deep dark web. Cool, that's fine. I don't care. At the end of the day, I'm not like a multi-billionaire that who's
it's out of our control. There's no way, like even if you signed up to the NHS has had massive cybersecurity hacks where leaks and so your information is just floating around the internet, even without you having to participate in the internet. You might have just signed up to hospital and it's on the internet.
I just think that the thing that annoys me about these arguments about data from people who are these people is just like, I'm a very simple person when it comes to just thinking about impact. And I'm like, if somebody owns all of my data and they're going and doing what they want with it, how does that impact me day to day?
Yeah.
It fucking doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me happier or less happier. It doesn't, when I get up and make my coffee, I'm not, oh shit, somebody's got my data. What is it actually? People get so caught up in this, and I'm like, just shut up.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It's like the threat of terrorism is like far less likely than you being kicked in the head by a donkey. Do you know that? More people die every year by sticking a knife into a toaster than by terrorism. And yet this is the number one fear that many people have, is like they're going to be in some explosion or some incident because of the big news that it gets, even though it's not so damaging. Another story, nuclear power kills far less people than any other energy providing source, even though the big ones we know about, Chernobyl and Fukushima, they seem like horror stories, right? Like it seems like, oh my God, that was just terrible cataclysm, and they were terrible events. But coal kills 30 times more people every year. Like, so nobody makes a big story out of the coal issues when there's 30 times more people dying. And
it's
so
the same.
Perspective matters so much.
It's what we said earlier about the unknown and holding emerging technologies to different standards. The interesting thing to your points there, gents, about data is I think there's a few factors that are leading people down a path. I'm with you that no one cares about data, yet when you survey every person and say, do you care about your data? They say yes, but they don't, because their behaviors and actions show. Because care is so subjective, right? If you ask me, I care about things, I'll say, yeah, sure, why not? But then I'll go do different actions. So really observing behaviors is a much more fruitful sort of qualitative, quantifiable approach than asking people. So you see a lot of kind of false data around people care about trust, they care about these things. Where I will say there's a point of difference here is you're talking from an individual's perspective. Individuals do not care about the sovereignty of their data. But what companies do, there's a distinction there. And what you're seeing is a lot of people, business will be the innovation ground for AI agents, meaning there are two fields. And I'm consulting for a business called Whitespace, and they're really pioneering, a European business, really pioneering the agentic processing field, but for very complex problems. They work with the Ministry of Defense all the way through to the NHS. They've got a really high pedigree team of engineers working behind the scenes to basically not just do menial things, do the really complex stuff and like really deep thought. And some of the things that they've been showing me has blown my mind. A lot of it I can't actually speak about publicly. However, what I will say is one of the things that they're really keen on is building systems that can be air-gapped. So they're really keen on creating systems that you can take them remotely off the cloud. So these big sort of data machines that are absorbing everything, they're building disconnected systems. And actually, when you think about AI more broadly, that becomes interesting because, and I found this data point the other day, that 2.6 billion people don't have access to the internet. We have such a Western bias, but like a third of the world's population do not have access to the internet. So they certainly won't have access to these tools. But if we believe these tools could be as impactful and as useful as possible, if we create systems to take AI into remote locations and disconnect them from the cloud, run them at much lower cost, train models for very specific things, create agentic processors to do very specific tasks. You could send a GP to a, impoverished third part of the world and like have a consultative machine that is actually really good and is accessible 24 hours a day. You could have 100 of those at a fraction of the cost of, a doctor. And maybe it's not as good as having a real person and a doctor there, but something like that means you could save lots of lives at a relatively low cost by advancing these types of technologies. So my view, like on the data piece, is there is a world for it. Companies care. I don't think people do. But companies will be the places where we create the solutions to basically protect sovereignty and protect individual data. But it'll start from a corporate place more than anything.
It's such a rapidly evolving space, isn't it? Like, I understand both sides of the argument, honestly. The reason I was bringing up the analogy of like the data issue with nuclear and everything like that is because there are bad actors that could get hold of this data that could do really bad stuff, criminally impersonating you, like cloning your identity, like all sorts of nefarious stuff. But that is a story that's been blown up and fear-mongering. But actually, it's a very minute, small part of the things that most people are just advertisers buying your data. That a large majority, I'd say 18 to 90% of your data purchased online is by brands that want to sell you things and want more information on you in order to better sell you things. And that's collected and harvested by Google and Meta and everyone using pixels and all this other stuff. So again, like it's contextual as to where this data is used, as to where you should be fearful of it. But the big thing that's at the top, that's very minute, like terrorism, is like the thing everyone talks about. The bad actors that could do these things. especially in America, I know that social security numbers are something that they really don't want on the internet, because that is identity theft possibilities. That's one of the most highly, criminal things that online people will want to do.
The entire analog system that is the US, whether that's the financial system, whether that's, state by state, how data is governed, that is a mess. And that's going to get, a wave is coming into shore that is going to, excuse my language, fuck so many people because you have incompetent governments not knowing what they're doing, not knowing how to defend against, there are some serious risks. There really are. Gents, that went bloody hell of a dark for us to end our sort of return podcast, but I am going to leave it there because I have a call in 5 minutes.
You got some more sunbathing to do, no?
Yeah.
I wish, mate. I will be sunbathing this weekend because I am expected to get highs of 24 degrees.
Oh, lucky.
Don't be super jealous. 24 degrees is nice.
Tipping down here.
It is.
It's good. And then we will be together in like a week and a half or something in Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah. Semra Spotlight.
Semra Spotlight. I just think it's really cool what they've done, brought together so many people. Interesting, the setup of like mastermind sessions and keynotes.
I don't really give a shit about any of the talks. I just want to meet people.
There we go. It's good enough reason. It's a good enough reason. 100%.
Bringing lots of people who I want to meet in the same place is really all I'm going for, to be honest.
They've collected a lot of people together, haven't they? They've really taken it seriously.
That's the most valuable thing.
Yeah, the ROI on this event for them, and we're speculating, will be very significant. Of just people just talking, the earned media and earned attention. Yeah. High funnel, sort of top of funnel awareness stuff. I think they'll have absolutely nailed it with this event. I assume it was expensive and a lot of logistical work, and but bang for buck, it'll probably be a very good investment for them.
I'm imagining that we're going to meet a lot, because I don't get to events like this outside of London much. So we're going to probably meet a lot of the European creatives that I haven't actually interacted with. That's the most exciting thing to me. I don't get to encounter that much. Amsterdam's kind of like got the biggest airport for it as well, don't they? So you can like swing in there pretty easily from Berlin and France. And I'm imagining there to be a really big multi-mix crowd there.
Absolutely. And
should be exciting.
We're going to have a fun time. What happens in Amsterdam stays in Amsterdam.
Right. It's not Vegas, mate. It's not Vegas.
Right, gents. Adios. I'll speak to you soon.
Ciao.